Welcome to Business Bites. My name's Henry. I am from the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Trevor today. Trevor's going to be delivering a really informative and really important Business Bites webinar for us today on neurodiversity in the workplace. And how to really embrace that, such an important issue. Before I kick off, like I said, I'm sharing the slides today, so Trevor will be asking me to move on to the next slide throughout the session. If you have any questions at all throughout, please do just note those down in the meeting chat, and we'll address those at the end of the session in a dedicated Q&A. For those of you that have joined, normally I can see you all, but I can't see you today as I'm sharing the screen. So if your name is iPhone or anything like that, please do go onto the side and change your name so we know who's joined us today. But that is enough from me. I'm now going to pass you over to Trevor. So Trevor, over to you. Let's do it.
Thanks, Henry. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Welcome. My name's Trevor Toohig. I run Smart ADHD, a neurodiversity hub in Ashford. We do all sorts of things, ADHD assessments and so on. But time is short. We've got till 11, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions at the end. So I'm going to get straight to it in this neurodiversity in the workplace webinar. So we've got a quick quiz to start us off. So, Henry, if you don't mind clicking onto the next slide, the first question is roughly what percentage of the UK population is estimated to be neurodivergent? So feel free to stick your answers in the chat if you don't mind. A, 2%, B, 7%, C, 15%, or D, 38%. Just stick down what you think is the right answer there. Roughly what percentage of the UK population is estimated to be neurodivergent? Interestingly, I mean, I always like looking at these stats because for me, whatever the official stat is, it's obviously going to be a great deal higher because there are so many people who either are not diagnosed or who essentially, aren't necessarily wanting to get themselves diagnosed and may also have neurodiverse traits. So we've got some answers coming in. Thank you very much, everybody. And I can tell you that the answer to this one is C. It's actually 15%, but a lot of you put 38%. And to be fair, I would probably suggest and argue that it's nearer that number, once we catch up with the diagnoses and people who need it. So thank you very much for that. Question number two, Henry, if you don't mind flipping over the slide. It gets a bit tricky here. What percentage of autistic graduates found full-time work 15 months after graduation, according to the Buckland Review? So did 86% find employment, 64% B, 36% C, or D, 16%? Again, if you're happy to, just drop an answer into the chat. We've got some good ones coming in. 16% seems to be quite popular. Some people with 36%. Yeah, that's generally where we are. The answer is 36%. So only about a third of people, well over a year after their graduation, people who have autism found employment, which is quite a concerning stat, I think, for neurodiverse people in the workplace. And we'll get into that a little bit further down the line. Final question to start us off. In UK job adverts, how much did neurodiversity-related wording increase between January 2017 and December 2024? A, do you think it stayed roughly the same? B, do you think it doubled? C, quadrupled? Or D, it increased tenfold across all roles? So obviously we're going to have seen an increase, as people know, in neurodiversity circles, and obviously, in the wider employment sphere, neurodiversity has taken a much bigger role. So thank you very much for your answers. The answer is C. It nearly quadrupled. So it just goes to show how big, and how much the world has changed. So, Henry, you were a bit premature there, but I actually appreciated that. Feel free to drop it onto the next slide. What could possibly go wrong? A tired man and a man with severe ADHD trying to work the admin and the gadgets here. It's going to all go brilliantly, I'm sure. Right. Okay. So let's get into it. Obviously, what we need to learn about is how employers, how companies, need to kind of update their philosophies and ideologies to sort of manage the 2026 workplace. And I run, an ADHD and a neurodiversity company, and even for me, it's a minefield. There's a lot of grey area. It's very difficult. It's a sticky wicket if anyone's a cricket fan, and things change, quite often in the space. So it's difficult to keep abreast of what is going on. But obviously now, mental health and neurodiversity are absolutely essential, that we embrace these ideas and we embrace the sort of changing tide as it happens. And one of the things that I'm finding a greater increase in when people come to Smart ADHD and need support and help from the corporate world is they're finding, employers are finding lots of stress, lots of burnout, lots of anxiety. And often the underlying reason for this is because of undiagnosed autism or ADHD that are basically prevalent across the workforce, but maybe haven't been recognised, or individuals haven't had the financial ability to get themselves assessed, or they haven't known how to start and how to deal with that. And that's a little bit where we come in as Smart ADHD. We help people in a lot of ways, but we do help individuals find affordable ways to get assessed and to get the support and help that they need. We also help and support employers with kind of the sort of nuances and difficulties that they might face when they're dealing with individuals who are suffering with absenteeism or feel that they can't produce the right level of work in the workplace and so on. And we can help bridge the gap. So we work with both people. We work with individuals and we work with employers as well. And we found that obviously as part of that, we have been able to increase and improve productivity. And basically, let's face it, what are we most concerned about? We're concerned about the bottom line. And all of this, contributes to the financial aspect. We want happy staff. We want productive staff. We want happy people in society, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing for most people. But for our business, the biggest thing is finance and the bottom line. And so if we can increase people's the support for individuals, then obviously that has a long-term impact on the business. So just a few stats for you here. I mean, a lot of this stuff is out there already, but 51 billion is the annual cost of the UK employer for absenteeism and people not being supported in work. Obviously, ADHD traits and the knowledge of ADHD is rising, and people are more aware that stress, burnout, and so on are very, very often, products of ADHD. And I think when I was an employee, I worked in teaching and education for 20 years. There was very much a culture of, unless there's, your arm's fallen off or something like that, you turn up to work. I think obviously that's changed now, and I think the emotional health of people is far more important, and that's something that I will get onto in a little bit as well. Henry, if you wouldn't mind, next slide, please, sir. Okay, so this is what the main thing that employers I think are interested in, because I think we'll all remember from our first jobs. For me, it was in the sort of mid to late 90s. Everyone had to deal with health and safety. And I remember, I've picked up numerous amounts of boxes with my knees over the years in every single, health and safety presentation that we've been through. I'm sure you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it's only in 2026 that we have caught up to psychological health and mental well-being. So now employers have a legal now responsibility to look after the psychological well-being of their employees. Now, That again is a bit of a grey area. Like, what does that actually mean in practical and pragmatic terms? And that is again slightly unclear. But this framework is out there. Presumably, it will be added to by the government as time goes on. But essentially, what it does mean in practical terms is that if an employee is concerned about how they're being treated, or they feel that they haven't been supported, or that they work for you and then maybe they get an ADHD diagnosis while they work for you, there could be an issue for the employer, right? They could then come and say, well, I haven't had these reasonable adjustments, I haven't had this situation, I haven't been helped by this individual, I've had these problems. And again, that's where hopefully Smart ADHD can come in, support the individual, support the employer, and help smooth transition and get things to a positive place. We also look at, and we help people with companies with neurodiversity policy. And we basically make things a bit clearer, because unless you are an expert in this sort of thing, or like me, you have neurodiversity, it can be incredibly difficult to navigate, and there are certain areas of health and well-being that I certainly wouldn't dive and delve into, because I have no acumen or experience on that. And I thought it must be very, very hard for people who don't have the knowledge and so on to kind of try and navigate this. These new laws and frameworks come out and people are expected to have the knowledge, and sometimes they just don't. So it is tough. So this is where we come in. We try and explain what reasonable adjustments look like in real life, because again, someone says, I need reasonable adjustments, and you're like, well, what does that mean? And I totally understand that, because what's reasonable, what's fair? Is it all right if I have 3 hours off work to go outside and smoke? Probably not, but we can sort of get that into a manageable expectation for the employee and for the employer, in hopefully a friendly, affable and supportive way for both kind of parties, really. We obviously support ADHD, autism, executive function and burnout needs, and the main thing is we help managers, and this is the biggest thing we've done recently, is helping managers be able to give clear, concise instructions that would support the neurodiverse. It is very difficult to support neurodiverse people because it presents itself in many, many different ways. I've had a couple come to me recently for an ADHD assessment each. One of them, who's a female, is very loud, hyperactive, outspoken, and that side of ADHD. The gent in the relationship he internalizes everything, and he's very shy and he's very quiet, yet he has still been diagnosed with ADHD. Now, normally the stereotype is the other way round. The boys are loud, hyperactive, climbing trees, headbutting things, whatever, and girls are, internal. And that is generally the way it does sit with the data. But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's so hard to know what things are going to throw up. It hits everyone in a very unique and different way. So yes, there are lots of things here that employers must consider. I'm just anxious of time, so I'm just going to quickly move on, but I'm sure we can share this later on. So, Henry, do you mind just flicking on again, please? Okay, so as we've discussed, as the quiz told you earlier, neurodiversity is already in the room. I'm not telling you anything new. What people don't necessarily understand about neurodiversity, and what Smart ADHD's belief about it is that it is a huge positive. Okay, the way we look at it is that if you harness your ADHD, your autism, any of your neurodiversity, your life can become what it needs to be. Okay, so we're very aspirational, we're very positive, we take a stance, about trying to be, you take whatever path you want, but we can advise very strongly on how to do it without medication. And we believe that people with neurodiversity have high levels of creativity, innovation, problem solving, pattern recognition, and hyper focus. So many ADHDers are entrepreneurs. Just off the top of my head, Richard Branson's the first example that comes to my mind. Multiple business owner, and finds solutions to problems that sometimes neurotypical people can't. So the biggest problem we have in employment is that most neurodiverse people don't fit into the box, okay? And often employers want people to fit into the box. And most ADHDers, in particular, will just smash against the box and go, let me out, I need to get out, And so, again, Smart ADHD can come and help and smooth that and bridge the gap and try and ensure happiness and confidence in your employees, but also have a manageable and productive, work environment for the employer to make sure that there's a long-term relationship. And again, I'm very aware that neurodiversity often presents itself as laziness or abruptness or rudeness or being difficult or argumentative. And these are issues that have plagued me and a number of my clients and colleagues, across their life, because neurodiversity is misunderstood. And it's often extreme frustration at things not working in the most productive way, because ADHDers normally find the solution to things incredibly quickly. People with autism, again, it's a stereotype, but it is also a pattern, are very, very good at deep thinking, critical thinking, and can deep dive and hyper focus. So if things don't happen in that way, it can cause like a cognitive dissonance. It can cause issues with executive function for neurodiverse people. And again, it's not easy in the workplace. So we, again, try to come in and we try and improve happiness levels and so on in work. One of the analogies we use, there's a few analogies we use. One with kids is that ADHDers have a Ferrari brain but bicycle brakes, which always proves quite popular. And, we all know that guy or lady who, says it and then have gone, oh, God, I should have said that. And that's kind of ADHD in a nutshell. And another way we look at it in the workplace, and I think there's a book about this, about hunters in farmers' worlds. And, if we go back to the tribes and we go back to the savannah and how we used to live, let's say, everyone had their role and everyone had their job and everyone did their job, and there was no neurodiversity really, because you had the role that you were perfect at and that you were good at, whether it's staying up till midnight and watching England, whether it's it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's going out onto the let's say you're sharpening your tools, you're sharpening your arrows, you're creating your bows and spears and so on, and you're going out to hunt for the tribe. That's really the ADHDers world. That's where they're happy and that's where they thrive. There's dopamine, there's excitement, there's thrill, they manage their own workload, and there's also the dopamine explosion if and when you catch the thing that you need to bring back to feed everyone. Plus there's that empathetic, because ADHDers are very sensitive, and there's that empathetic reward when everyone's eating the food. So the issue is that the workplace and employment doesn't really fit the brains of the individuals that we have. And again, that is something that we try and do. We try and make sure that happens, and that we can support people to make sure their strengths are being looked at and supported. Next slide, please, Henry. Thank you. Okay, stress, burnout, and mental health. So, again, we know what you can read the slide, but fundamentally, unproductive neurodiverse people look like the naughty kid at the back of the class. That's the easiest way for me to put it, And sometimes, there's that saying in teaching where you give the naughty boy the chalk, to use an England reference, Jude Bellingham, we make him the main man and he'll probably perform the best, that's a kind of a strategy that we use. And again, this is something that Smart ADHD has great expertise and experience in doing, is kind of taking that employee that you might have that is not working and is not producing and so on, and finding the ways and the strategies in which we can make it work. And usually it's to do with engagement. If you're an ADHD or someone with neurodiversity, you generally want to feel fully engaged. If you're not really engaged and there's large parts of your day where you are not doing, or you're not feeling like you're integral to what is happening, you'll switch off and disengage and you won't be interested, and that is unfortunately part of the way the brain works. And again, it's very difficult to navigate, but it's the things that we try and help with. So we identify early warning signs. We provide manager training and neurodiversity awareness. We offer ADHD informed coaching, regulation, planning, etc. So it's no secret, I presume, to anyone here that the amount of days we lose from work, the amount of money we lose for people not being in work, is clear to see. So that is something that we hope to alleviate and make both parties happier. Next slide, please, Henry. Managers are the front line. They're key, and obviously that spreadsheet that needs to be done by the end of the day is really important. But as human beings and as employers, we've got to take care of humanity. We've got to make sure people are happy. It's hard out there. Life's tough. It's confusing. What on earth's going on in a lot of things in the world? So we need to try and make our day-to-day as positive as possible. And again, that's where we can support people. We can help people at any level to kind of, smooth over the neurodiverse aspects for individuals. And again, for managers, we can teach people how to change their wording, be the manager you want to be, because no one wants to be the guy who's like, oh, come home from work again, and I didn't work with Dave didn't get it, and he lost his temper and all that sort of stuff, and then you feel bad in yourself, don't you? So we help to give that expertise and that experience and so on. And we also help with, like I say, reasonable adjustments and so on. But yeah, next slide, please, Henry. Okay, I've kind of touched on this quite a lot, but we feel that we provide solutions in East Kent and the wider area from policy, from just making your neurodiversity policies to practical workplace support. We do webinars. We can come in and talk to your staff. We can do things that are practical. We can bridge the gap. We can support people who are off work. And we generally just try and make life a lot easier. You may have noticed some of the more, you might not notice actually, because Henry's covering it on my screen, but there is a smart healing little banner at the top, which is another aspect of our business that we are looking into in the sort of Q3, if you like, of 2026, which has we are investing in physical machines. We are investing in nervous system regulation healing rooms, essentially, and we're hoping to open that towards the end of 2026 and make it accessible for anyone in Ashford who wants to use it. We have a CIC aspect of our business where we hope to be able to not only do corporate work or we want to be able to attract and support people from all backgrounds, from any financial sort of situation, to use and access not only our talking therapies but also our smart healing systems, which will be progressive, will be cutting edge, will be something that Ashford has actually not seen before. So it's an exciting future. In a, like I say, neurodiversity is a difficult world. I feel like I should stop talking now and just see if there's any questions. But hopefully that gives people a little insight and a little taste of what we do, how we can help, and how we can all together navigate neurodiversity in the workplace. Many thanks.
Trevor, thank you very much for that one. Yes, we certainly have about 5 minutes or so for a quick Q&A. So, I can see you're clapping, or are you raising your hand, or was it just clapping? You can see it from the little emoji you put out. If not, Paul, I can see you've got a question.
Yeah, just thank you, Trevor. That was really helpful. And thanks for the energy. This time in the morning, really needed that energy. So thank you very much for bringing it. You talked about the impact that clarifying communication for people in that neurodiverse space in the workplace can have on employer-employee communication, which sounds great, a bit smooth, a bit more harmonious. Is it a realistic leap to say that actually the same kind of approach could impact positive communications with customers?
Yes, I think absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally think that. I mean, every individual, Paul, as you know, is different, and sometimes in the workplace environment specifically, instructions might be given in a certain way. Let's say, I don't know, employers, direct their employees via email. For some neurodiverse people, that is not necessarily the best way for them to understand. Some are more auditory and need to have it reinforced, let's say, in different ways. And I think that absolutely can reflect in customer relations and customer service as well, because if you have conflicts or issues with clients and customers, then I think that's one way in which you can reduce that by kind of looking into how we communicate and what is the best way to communicate. I mean, most ADHDers have issues with email and the written word. They come across, for well, Paul, that for myself, emails and the written word can often come across sharper, let's say, than is meant to be. And that is not, and that is, again, people can sort of sit there and go, oh, that guy is very sharp on his emails. But when I meet him, he's really lovely, which is feedback I often get. And you don't mean to be rude or abrupt in your emails. It's just part of the neurodiversity and the fact that, you want to be quick, you want to be efficient, you want to get it done, and you want to move on to the next thing. So I'm not entirely sure I've answered your question there, Paul, but
yeah, you absolutely have. I think the key takeaway for me is from all of this is that with better understanding, we can actually not make the mistake of seeing neurodivergent behavior as something other than that which it is. So we also bake a lot of intention behind what we see. And I think what's really helpful is that there's an understanding that actually there's more to what's going on here than what I might be thinking and feeling about what's going on here.
Very much so. Very much so. Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant, Paul. Thank you very much. Anna, I can see you've raised your hand. Did you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
That's very polite of me, so I didn't cough through the presentation. Really interesting. Thank you very much. And I think what I want to talk about very quickly is get your views on inclusive leadership altogether. Because if you have an inclusive leadership style, you are supporting people who may be neurodivergent, but also you're supporting people in other ways. So you don't have to have some of the diagnosis to adjust your style to make sure that you're leading your whole team effectively in the way they wish to be led. Or a team of colleagues, you can just think, well, actually, that person, it's no point speaking to them on a Monday morning because they're always horrendous. If I can go and have a chat with them on Monday afternoon, it'll be much more positive. And so it's understanding everybody you work with, I think. So if you assume everybody needs to be looked after and sort of led slightly differently, you're automatically super inclusive. And I have lots of experience about leading ADHD teams and everything else. And I just think having that whole mindset benefits everybody.
I think that mindset does benefit everybody, and that's a nice way to look at it. The only reservation I'd have about that is that we just need to accept there are, the person who's horrendous on a Monday morning, it possibly needs support and inclusive approaches, and you manage that with your strategies. But I'm just very anxious and aware that neurodiversity is it can be a real affliction, and if it's not harnessed and it's not used in the right way, then the burnout and the repercussions are not the same for everybody else.
No,
do you see what I mean?
I'm not lowering the impact of that. I'm just saying, as a leader, if our style is always to be inclusive.
Yes,
and people with ADHD and emails, I do appreciate that some people, even seeing an email can cause panic, let 100%. Alone responding to them. So, so there's all sorts of things, but I just think our mindsets as leaders need to be more inclusive to start off with.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because it's so nice to hear people who are in positions of power who have that mindset. Rather than the kind of turn up for work, start at 9. If you're late, well, we don't care. We don't want to know. You clock in then. And that is something that I've experienced so many times, and it's just not the way we should be nowadays. So it's really refreshing to hear you speak, Anna. Thank you so much for that.
Perfect, Anna, thank you very much. We did have one final question. We're just going to make it a very quick one. If anyone does have to drop out, please do feel free to. But Amanda, you had a quick question. Did you want to unmute and ask that? If not, Trevor, the question was, how do you balance reasonable adjustments with the needs of the business?
Again, sorry, Henry.
The question was, how do you balance reasonable adjustments with the needs of the business?
Easily, I think. I think it's very easy. I think most people who want reasonable adjustments, most people that I know with neurodiversity, myself included, want to work really hard, want to be productive, but are super anxious about appearing to be lazy and so on. So, for instance, one of the ones that I've done recently, one company, a gent wanted to work through his lunch break but go home earlier, an hour earlier, because he wants to use the gym before he gets busy. Reasonable, fair. He works harder. He wants to impress people, that sort of thing. You know, it's like also people need little breaks, like movement breaks or stand sit desks and things like that, which are really useful for people. But just because sort of they're having those things, or because they're having breaks that may seem like they are longer or whatever than other people, that doesn't mean they are not being equally productive. So I think, from my experience, those people who want reasonable adjustments are also acutely aware that they need to perform and they want to perform, and when they get those reasonable adjustments, they will perform better than beforehand. So yeah, that's my 2 cents worth.
Perfect, Trevor, thank you very much, and that does bring us nicely to the end of the session. So first of all, I'd just like to thank you all for joining today and for taking part in the Q&A at the end. It was lovely and engaging. Obviously, Trevor, massive thank you for delivering that insightful presentation for us today. I think it was a really important topic to cover, and I think you've covered it brilliantly for us.
Thanks.
That leads me to just say that, yeah, thank you all ever so much for coming. I've been Henry from the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.